Well, welcome to the May meeting of the Nevada County Camera Club. Thank you all for showing up. I'm Mike Shea. I'm the president of the club, in case you didn't know. The club is moving towards incorporating and becoming tax exempt with the Internal Revenue Service. I sent out an email earlier today. And by the way, if you should check, if you're not getting emails from mshay49@hotmail.com, look in your junk mail and then say that that address is okay, because that's my email address. And when I send out Camera Club information, that's the email address I send it from. So I sent out this email about the bylaws, and I sent a copy of the bylaws, and there's a couple of copies in the back there. And we're going to vote on whether we're going to adopt these bylaws at the next meeting. So it'd be really important to show up at that meeting, because we need a lot of people to vote yes at that time. There's so many changes. I don't have time to go through them all with you. So I would really recommend you take a look at them. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. My contact information, if you log into the Camera Club website and look at the members list, I'm in there. And call or email is fine. We'll get it straightened out. But really want to vote on these next meeting. And I have to give you 1 month advance notice. So that's where we're at. With that, Barbara, you have time to come up and talk about membership.
Did you notice that? I got it. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all here. I want to welcome the Zoomers, too. How many do we have out there on Zoom tonight? Okay, we'll take a look in a little bit. Anyway, we're glad that you're here. We have 2 visitors. Jerry Berry, where are you? Okay, well, he's not exactly a newbie, and he will be back, won't you, Jerry? Anyway, welcome to all of you. We have new member Monica Hughes. Monica, will you stand up and just give us a brief little bit about photography and what it is to you? Excellent. Thank you. And then we have Bill Sinini, and I'm not quite sure what the status is, but Bill, stand up and introduce yourself. Welcome. Okay, so I think we're just about, I want to remind you for people who are new, people who are old and haven't been there for a while, take time to go to the website. There's lots of information there. If you're having a problem with finding something or understanding something, sign in on the website, check it out. I will be in the back. Come and talk to me. I'll help you find what it is that you're looking for. So get your questions answered about that. So nccameraclub.com, that's where you need to go. Okay, so AI. What's up with AI? We've been hearing about this in photography for a while. I've been hearing about it all over the news in the last couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to this edition, okay? Anyway, enjoy, and Grace will tell you all about who's going to be with us for AI.
Hey, you messed with my microphone. Any other announcements by anybody? David? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Natasha. I'm also new to this club. Uh, all my life, I was told that I can't photograph. It was mostly by my friends uh, in Ukraine. Sorry, it's a lot more, it's a different society there. So I decided, why not? And I want to prove that I can photograph, or not prove, but I wanted to understand that um, that I was right and I could. So I really enjoy to take photographs. I'm not as good at it technically because I just started, but I'm looking for any conversations, or if everybody wants to talk to some newbie and mentor or coach, I'm all up to it. Thank you very much.
Well, sorry. I mean, you guys are here. You're all ready. We're having technical difficulties with the computers. So we want to make sure that the Zoom folks, can also see the presentation. So Grace, do you want to come up and start introducing? And maybe by the time you get done, we'll be done.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? All right, I'm going to try and read and look at you all at the same time. So as Barbara said, we've been, AI has been the hot topic of the day recently. And recently we also had a very lively discussion on our club's Google chat, which, by the way, if you're not on the Google email chat list, you'll want to talk to Kathy Triolo. Kathy, can you raise your hand? So she is the keeper of that email list. It's not an official club list, but it's a really fun one to be on. So please do check with her if you're not sure if you're on it, or if you're not on it, so you can be part of that. So we had a discussion about AI, and given how that topic is very hot right now, I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Jeff Foster, who's an expert on AI in photography and video work. An award-winning producer, published author, videographer, photographer, animator, editor, trainer, and aerial cinematographer, Jeff has over 30 years of experience in traditional and digital images, video, illustration, animation, motion graphics, and special effects. He's worked with clients such as Tribune Broadcasting, Fox Television, Universal Studios, and Disney, and currently serves as senior manager and producer for Marcom Video and Imaging Services at Biorad Laboratories. We're really lucky to have him with us on Zoom tonight. Hopefully everything is working. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Foster. And Jeff, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Grace. I trust that everybody can see my shared screen, both remote and in person. So I'm going to just move on with what we got here. I just a little bit about myself beyond that fairly lengthy intro there. I have been doing a lot of imaging work over the decades. I actually started out in the 70s in high school, where we built a black and white film lab, and my classmate and friend, Nicholas Kristof, some of you may know from New York Times and other media outlets. He's an editor there. He and I built a film lab, and we actually talked them into letting us do Cibachrome, which was like, woo, color from transparencies in your own black and white lab. But anyway, that was my first taste of photography back in the mid 70s. So I go back a ways. I have seen a lot of, and here's where the relevance of all that comes from. I've seen a lot of change in the visual arts industry, obviously, since the mid 70s. I had studied to be a mechanical draftsman in engineering. I was trained for that, and that was long before AutoCAD. I had trained to be an illustrator, and I did a lot of my work with airbrush. And I would do photo retouching. I trained with some really high level folks for retouching. Had to unlearn everything that I taught myself because I'm mostly self-taught with everything. And so I saw a lot of things change from the late 80s going on. I was doing a lot of album cover artwork, doing a lot of agency work at the time. And I started to see that dwindle a bit around 87 or so, 88. And I couldn't quite figure out why. I was getting less and less of that work because there was a shift toward a lot of creative, especially creative directors and agency folks that were just wanting to use photographs or something somewhat modified, monotone photographs stripped in with some text. And that was now the new album cover, genre. And because it was cheap, they didn't have to pay an illustrator. They didn't have to have color separations done. They could do something quick on a Mac 2 SE and just basically a black and white photo with one color wash and a knockout of text. And they were calling that album cover artwork. Of course, that's when CDs were coming into play. And so that wasn't as elaborate. They didn't really care to have big LP album cover artwork anymore. So I took that as a challenge for myself in my career to say, I need to get in on this. And I did. I hit the ground running. I got a little venture capital to get started with my own digital imaging business in 1991. And I ended up with a couple big Quadra 900s, if anybody goes back that far to remember those days. And I just dove in learning everything I could possibly find out about what does it take to create images, to scan and go through the whole process of everything. And I just took it as a challenge that I need to be in on this or I'm going to be left behind. But as I've developed my own skill set along the way, getting into animation, doing visual effects, doing all this stuff that was just interesting to me, I did realize that it's never too late to jump on and start, but also it was an ever evolving process. Tools are always changing. They're never stationary. They're never set, and this is the way we're always going to do it. So I have seen so much change in the last especially 30 years, and technology going the rate that it is now. I see it as a challenge for us to say, okay, well, we're not going to be able to fight this. So, maybe we need to embrace it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that AI is going to take over the world. There's a lot of fear about that. And I think there's going to be enough checks and balances in that to hopefully there is, that's not really going to happen. Because right now, if you understand how a lot of this imaging is created, it isn't necessarily just copy and paste. It isn't necessarily a machine or a robot that's out there thinking up new ways to create things. It's basically a library of content, whether it's been ill-gotten or observed or accumulated one way or another. And that's a totally different topic, which I'm sure you guys have already had discussions on. But however, they've got this library of millions and millions of images that they will try to reorganize pixels. So you're basically dealing with pixel data that's being reorganized into a fashion based on prompting and whatnot. So it's not really a brain that's out there in a jar with electrodes coming out of it. It's really just a matter of numbers, ones and zeros, again, everything digital. So I think that for most people, and I look at this as a working creative and somebody who's in the industry in many ways, I think as a creative person, it's invigorating. I've seen a lot of people feel like, wow, this is just fun. I'm having fun time exploring this and whatever. I think in that regards, it's been a really good tool because I see it really, I look at it from a tool standpoint more than a replacement or a successor to what I've been doing. And it may come to a point where I'm going to be redundant. You know, my work is going to be redundant. I can't see that because I'm trying to evolve and kind of grow with it versus I've been doing this forever. I'm going to sit here and hold my feet in and not not evolve with it. So, you know, from that standpoint, I think it's a perspective issue. I don't see that it's going to necessarily replace anything or anybody entirely. I think the areas that will probably see the most effect will be like stock photo libraries, things. I mean, they've already been so consumed by corporate world anyway. Nobody makes any money on stock anymore. So, I mean, I know real photographers such as yourselves that have been doing this for decades and have, you know, huge libraries in Getty, and they've seen such a drop off with all of the basically the bastardization of the stock imaging world over the last decade or two that, you know, they can't make any money anymore as full-time photographer. So, but what does that mean for people as a hobbyist? Does that mean that, you know, your craft is now threatened, that nobody wants to, you know, see your work or buy your calendars or what art pieces or prints or anything? No. I mean, there's been so much competition just in photography, digital photography over the last 20 years, especially the last, you know, 10, 15 years, you know, mostly because of these things. You know, everyone's got a camera with them now and everybody's a photographer. And I say that tongue in cheek because I've seen people do some remarkable stuff with an iPhone. People like some of my friends and colleagues, Katrina Isman and Sean Duggan, he's a local guy too. And I mean, they do some amazing stuff with an iPhone and they can process it and do amazing stuff. So you don't always have to carry around, you know, 50 pounds of gear to get a great shot. But what makes your shot special is what you do with it. And when that comes to play, there's AI tools, and again, I see them as tools that will either work with your work and help you enhance what it is you're creating, or it will generate something that you can use and manipulate yourself, or work with the shots that you've already taken and you can combine them in Lightroom or Photoshop. So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. And again, we have a very limited amount of time tonight, so I'm not going to make you drink from the fire hose. I'm just going to touch on a few things and share some of how I have been using it in the real world, as well as just playing around, having fun, like making stuff like this. So let me go back a bit. Let me go all the way back to about a year ago, that far back. And that's when I started getting involved with, playing with some of this the image generation. And so this was one of my earliest crazy pieces that I wanted to prompt and ask for. And this was done on Midjourney, which is, I still think, is probably one of the best. And I'm not going to get deep into the technical, which one's better, which one's, does what. But it still uses the same Stability AI diffusion engine to generate images from text prompts. Now, this was something as simple as saying, Uma Thurman eating a sandwich, Tarantino style. So I kind of wanted that Kill Bill type thing. Well, this is as good as it was going to get, is what we have here. And that was a year ago. That was June of 2022. Just for giggles, I tried it most recently, same prompt exactly, word for word, and it gave me this. Now, I think it's a lot better. It still has some craziness to it. I mean, everything's crazy. It comes out of AI, but at least she has, it looks more like her. It looks more like, she's actually holding a sandwich. She doesn't have 20 fingers, things like that. So, it is getting better. Is this finished art? By no means. I'd say no. It's not. It's fun. It's interesting. It's obviously taking, images from that it's found on the internet or whatever, because it is Midjourney. So it's based on that same engine that is going out there and grabbing stuff. So, and then based on that, I just, that's about a year's worth of development, and that's how good it's getting now. So, but I do want to also point out some positive things about this whole transformation, and what is happening with Adobe's application of getting into the AI development world too. They've got their Firefly beta. I'm not sure how many of you may have already checked it out, because it's free. You just have to sign up for it and you can get accepted into it. This is basically the interface. It's a web interface. And what sets Adobe apart is that they only access the images in their own stock library. So if you have images put into Adobe stock, they're only accessing those images. They're not going out and searching the web for every little thumbnail and image that's out there. I'm hearing some other noise happening somewhere there. Somebody's got their mic on, I think. It's hot in my ear. So anyway, there's their library is only from their own licensed images. And I don't know how they do this, but they have claimed that any images that are used or utilized from a prompt that's put into there, somehow it's measured and the artist gets some kind of compensation for it. So I don't know, it may be like, Spotify or something, where you get, 1/100th of a cent every time your image is accessed or used. But they do at least contain everything within their own licensed rights library. They're not going out over the web, but they do give you a lot of controls, and it's definitely worth going and checking out. You can make some pretty wild stuff, some really pretty stuff too. Again, it's all beta, so you can't use it for anything commercially or anything yet. It's just for playing around with. But you can come up with some pretty crazy stuff. Like I've got this one here, just had kids eating spaghetti and drinking orange juice. It does a pretty good job. It's a little awkwardness to the hands. This little guy here cracks me up because that's kind of how I eat mine. And then speaking of food, I've got dogs in a fine restaurant, dining in a fine restaurant. So it's stuff silly and it's fun. Again, I don't see practical uses for a lot of this yet, because it is still pretty rough. This is supposed to be dog racing, and I found it was kind of funny that some dogs are in a car and some aren't, but they still got helmets on, so I thought that was pretty good. These guys here were my favorite right here. So as mentioned, I do work in biotech. We do a lot of marketing and images, so I just wanted to see what would happen if I put in some just generic things of scientists in white lab coats in a bright modern biotech lab. And this is the kind of thing that it popped up. One thing I've noticed that's different between Midjourney and DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and all of those, and then the Adobe beta, is the diversity of your results. If I put that same prompt in any of those others, I'm going to get a bunch of old white guys. And, that's what you get, unless you say, please give me, and then be specific of the diversity of your results. I didn't have to do that here. This is just a sampling of like 100 that I did. And it came up with a nice variety of a real mix of real looking people. They don't all look like models, they look like real humans, which is a good step in the right direction. There's a lot of things that still are messed up. So none of these are really usable. I mean, there's problems with a lot of things, especially the lab. The labs don't look anything like this in real life. And I don't even know what she's holding. It's a bent piece of glass or plastic, and things like that. And none of that's really used in a. She's not. This one's here. She's not really even holding that little beaker thing. It's kind of like half behind her. So there's a lot of issues with that. That's not going to replace stock photography anytime soon. But again, it's only been a year since I've dug into it, and it's much, much, much better than it was. And it doesn't really follow your instructions that closely. If I say I want to take this woman here and have her do all kinds of things, it may get close, but it'll never look like you'd have photo sessions of the same person. So there's a lot of things to be sorted out in that area. Well, another area that Adobe is developing is their text generation as well. And this is still in the Firefly beta as well, where you can type in your text. It's pretty limited right now, but you can look up what do you want in your text, and it'll 3D generate several different options. Well, again, being in biotech, I just picked genomes, and it gave me all these great little organisms in there. Well, it's nice because it gives you transparency, so you can overlay it in your design, and that's a nice option as well. Same thing, food. I'm very food focused, so. But yeah, it will eventually, and again, I think because these are, this is still just beta. There's a lot of limitations here, but at least it gives you a basic idea of where we're going with this. And if this can be something that can be incorporated into, Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator, InDesign, whatever, it becomes just an extension of it, then I think it's going to help people, especially designers, be able to come up with more creative stuff, for one thing, and be able to have accessibility to do it right there by themselves. And that's really going to help independence the most, I think, because it'll give you accessibility to creative content that you would either have to start from scratch and do yourself, or hire somebody else, or contract out for that type of work. So Adobe is thinking about it, and they are working on it as well and incorporating in some of their tools. I'm going to show you a few. I'm getting rid of some of these because I got a whole bunch of them open here. So I'm going to show you a couple other things here, because for me, my biggest work is using it for image enhancement, and using AI for image enhancement, because in the real world, I don't need to make a bunch of silly stuff. We can all do that, and I play with it. In fact, actually, most of the images I've done have all been done on my iPhone when I'm bored doing something else, or laying in bed at night trying to go to sleep. I come up with some crazy ideas. So I don't really even spend that much time with it. Another AI that's used a lot is Topaz Gigapixel, and some of you may already use it now for your images. But to be able to see what it can do, I'm going to pull a couple examples out here. And let's see here. Yeah, so actually that's probably a good, I'll just leave it at that size. So this was my original, and this was just an AP photo. That's at 100% right now. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see just how bad this image is. So it's really pixelated. I'm actually at what, 537%. Let's go to 400, and you can see all this JPEG damage and everything. It's basically a thumbnail. It's just really kind of nasty. I ran it through Topaz Gigapixel. I said I need to make it 400%, and this is that's their 100% response. So it really cleaned up a lot. It does have some facial recognition and reconstruction involved. It will do that. Let me see, I've got I've got a shot here. And this is what their interface looks like. So I'm blowing it up, and I did allow it to use the face recovery. The thing with their face recovery is it's still, the eyes are a little bit wonky. I mean, she's like looking way over. She's kind of, that eye's kind of looking at Marilyn, and this one's looking above the camera. So that's a little strange. Her eyes are doing the same thing. And the hair, it's still a little sketchy, almost looks hand drawn. So while it's better, a lot better, and it does a remarkable job at a lot of stuff, I use worst case scenarios because I think that makes for a good demo. And I do that for myself too. How good is this software? And so I tend to go that route. But it does a pretty amazing job. But it's not cheap. You have to pay for Topaz. But it does a pretty good job of rebuilding some photos. Here's another one that, let me get this one up. This one here, another really low quality. I mean, you can barely see the details in her face, and it still did a pretty good job of pulling that out and smoothing it out a bit. So, and those are just photos off AP, the common libraries here. Let me go to the tool that I like the most, and I've used that. I'm going to show you some examples from that. This is called Rimini Web. This is it here. It's Rimini, Remini, and it's an Italian developer. They've been around for a little while. They've been around for about a year or so, which is like in dog years, it's like 10 years in AI years. So it's, they've been around for a while, and they've really got a nice tool here. If you can see, I mean, it literally will give you that kind of quality on a face from something that's that, blurry. So I'm going to show you some examples of just what I'm talking about here. So we've got this one here, a fairly famous image of old Honest Abe here. So photographically, I mean, it's pretty amazing. This was done with, I don't know, probably a pinhole camera or something of that nature. Probably a plate, I'm sure, but you can see how shallow the depth of field is on this. The only thing in focus really is just the very front of his face, pretty much his nose and a little bit of the eyes, but not too much. It's mostly his nose and mouth. They're really the only things in focus here, and it's dirty and whatnot. So my process for doing this type of work, reconstructive work, is to retouch first and then apply any other tools, color, or anything else. The first thing I do is clean everything up. Of course, my tool of choice to do that is Photoshop. And I can't live without my Wacom tablet. I've got a Wacom, it's actually a Mobile Studio Pro, but I have it hooked up like a Cintiq, and that way I can draw right on the image itself, and it makes retouching so much faster, especially when it comes to using like the healing brush, things like that. You can just go pop, 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 and get rid of all your different blemishes on there. So what I did, let me show, let me see, be able to show you this in layers probably. Let me see here. Nope, that's not the layered one. Hold on a second. This is probably it here. Yeah, that's it. So here's our original image. I cropped this one a little bit so you can get, see it a little easier. And then after retouching, I have done that much cleanup. So I got rid of all the dirt and scratches for the most part. is probably a little too clean for a historical photo, but you know, if you're doing this for somebody that's paying you, it's a project or family or whatever, and you want to restore something, this is probably the best process to go. So I took this image, retouched just like this. I put it into Rimini Web, and it spits out. Let me get just the enhanced. So, oh, that one was not cleaned. It was just enhanced. So if you run it through and you don't clean it up first, you don't retouch it first, it may give you some nice details, but it's not going to clean up everything. And you're still going to have to retouch it. It's much better to get it retouched first before you do that. So let me get out of there and go back to here. I do have it enhanced here. At 100%. So after I cleaned it up, I got that much out of it. Now it tends to add a little color to it. I usually desaturate the color because I don't want pink lips and blue eyes on everybody. So especially if it's a black and white. So you can see how much detail has been brought out. Actually, it's probably a little too much detail. It's a little too harsh and it doesn't have a natural feel. So if you go, that's the retouched version, and this is the AI enhanced version. And so for me, I liked a blend between them. And so sometimes I may go in and mask out certain parts of a face or certain parts of an image. In this case, I always start around 70% opacity of that enhanced layer. So somewhere around there. And then I get a little more of a natural, I get some of that natural softness that the photographer wanted in the first place, but yet I'm bringing out the detail, and I'm in all intents and purposes, I'm enhancing the resolution, so to speak, and then the focal point of the image itself. You can still see there's our depth of field is still back there, but you can see a little more hair detail. If I turn that off, you don't really, get that, and you're getting more of the film grain than you are the actual image itself. So to bring that out, it's pretty amazing though that it figured out some of these hairs in here just based on the spectral data of the original image. But it's pretty remarkable that it can do that much to that point. So I've got, let me see, I've got a couple more here that I've done that are, oh heck, I'll use my parents. I just took a scan from a scrapbook and just scanned a picture of my mom's high school photo. And I mean, that's it. It's that soft, and just ran it through. So I got a lot more face detail out of there. And I didn't have to do a whole lot of retouching because it was a nice photo. It was in good condition. So I didn't have to do a whole lot there. But it's a great tool for doing this type of work. Now, I promised you guys I'd show you some real world examples, and that's where I'm going to go next here. Before I get there, I'm running the Photoshop beta right now. This version here is the Photoshop beta. So I do have access to some tools that that the regular Photoshop doesn't have. I'm not going to go into demoing all the Photoshop tools, but I'm going to show you one in particular that's pretty remarkable. This is the, we're familiar with the healing brush. Go away. Come on, give me my tools. Go away. I want my tools. Get my menu here. I don't know why it's acting up. It's not giving me my menu. There we go. Okay, so the spot healing brush tool does a good job in a lot of cases. Let's zoom in and see if we use the spot healing brush tool here to remove this person. And I've used this tool a lot for lots of retouching, obviously. So it does a fairly good job. Not too bad. You can see there's some discoloration, some guessing here in this building, but it does a fairly decent job. But if we want to really remove them, it's the new tool, the remove tool. Now I'm just going to do one swipe over them here. It's thinking about it. And this is an AI-based tool. It does an almost indistinguishable job of getting rid of stuff. I can get rid of this car. And it's going to fill in data that it would assume is back there. This person here, poof, gone. So you can keep going around and getting rid of stuff with the remove tool. And before you know it, you've got an empty city street that might make a great background for something. Or it just looks like San Francisco now because everyone's afraid to go there. But it does a really remarkable job of actually getting rid of stuff. So that's a new tool. I got another image here. Oh yeah, this one's a little more complex because there's different angles and stuff. So I mean, this is a nice image of a hotel library, but say client says we don't want these bozos in there, so let's get rid of them. So I'm going to do just that. Just go over here, just paint them out. Okay, go take a break. There we go. He's on break. This guy's kind of a jerk, so I think they're going to let him go. So he's gone. There. So it does really a scary good job of removing objects. It doesn't always work. I have had a couple where I've played with it, a crowd of people in a bar or something, and I got rid of it, and instead it got rid of like other things, but the person's head was still there. I don't know, it just does some really weird things. So it's not always predictable. It just depends on probably the complexity of the background, luminosity, all of that. So, but really cool tool, and you can sign up if you've got an Adobe Creative Suite, Creative Cloud account. You can sign up and get the beta and download it and play with it yourself. So definitely some fun stuff. Neural filters and stuff that are all AI generated as well. They do a pretty good job. Even their retouching filter was pretty good. So okay, this is the part that is a little bit of a you didn't have to sign an NDA to come in and see this tonight, but I just ask that you don't share this video if you record it. So this is just a private showing to this group. That's my disclaimer. So I've been working on a feature doc at night. By day, I work for biotech. At night and weekends, I work in Hollywood. So I've been working on this feature film that's it's a documentary on Cheech and Chong. And because of that, the history of that, it goes way, way back. I mean, to their childhood in the 40s. So I got a lot of work to clean up thousands of images. I have stuff like this where there's this one is actually a little cleaner than most that I got to start with. But you can see that when whoever took the picture focused on the trees and everything in the background, but not the people in the front here. So I had to retouch it. So let me open up my actual layered doc here. Okay, so let's look at the background here first. That's the original image. And you can see they just threw a print on a scanner and sent it to me. So yeah, I had a lot of stuff to clean up. So I retouched it first. So that's my first stage, to clean up stuff. Then I had to kind of clean up the sky. So I had to make a patch for that because it has all this markings on there. And I don't think that was in the original photograph. I think that may have been because I had a plastic cover over it or something. I had a lot of that kind of stuff. It was just damaged. So I had to clean that up first. So that gave me my my retouched image that I could then take to Rimini. And after I took it to Rimini Web, I got a lot cleaner version where you can actually see their faces. Let me go up to 100% and you can see how much it actually gave me faces back here. And I'm zooming in, zooming in. So these faces just didn't exist to that level. That's before, and that's cleaned up and retouched. And this is after at 100%. Of course, I always back it off a bit. Like I said, I go to about 70%, and that's a good starting spot. So I get face detail, but it doesn't look, too phony. So, and keep in mind the intention of this process. The intention of this isn't to make a print. The intention of this is for a film. So these images, some of them, they may zoom in a little slowly on an image for like a second or two. But most of them, because there's so many of them, go flying by. You may see 4 or 5 images, in one little shot. This goes boom, 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 like a half a second each, and your brain barely registers it. But if you can identify who you're looking at, that makes it a little easier, and the brain can comprehend that. If the image is too fuzzy or too indistinguishable, they go, who was that? I'm not quite sure who that was. So, you've got to understand the intent of what it is you're creating. Now, this one was an interesting piece just because I had to combine 2 photos together to create one. So I did a lot of composites like that. And again, you can see it's just a scan of a print. And here's Cheech back there, but they didn't want to use this shot. They wanted to use that one and this one, but they wanted them to merge together. There's actually 2 different angles, 2 different elements altogether. So I'm going to show you the composite, how it worked. I had to do a lot of these too. They go, well, we like this one and we like this image, but we need to, switch somebody around. And can you put these guys together in the same scene? Of course, that's what you do in Photoshop. So it's taken a minute because these are huge too. I mean, you're looking at it now, it's 16%. So this was a really large scan. I have to work with a lot of really large files. And it's opening, and it's opening. And I don't have any music for opening images. So here we go. That's what I started with. There's Cheech. And I had to clean up because I'm putting Tommy over top of content here where there was some other dirt back there. And then I had to put, I just extended it even more. Then I've got a mask here of just Tommy's on his own mask there. And then I cleaned that up, and then I AI enhanced everything. And I think I did a little more hair detail. Oh yeah, actually I had to paint in some hair because it was a little too fuzzy. I couldn't get a clean cut out of there. So I had to go in there and paint in some hair details as well. So the anatomy of a composite to make this work. So you can tell between that and the original images, we got people over here. I had to take them out and extend everything out. So, and again, this is for film, so I needed a certain aspect ratio and everything. So that's typical of the type of productions I had to do. Again, I think I've got 1,400 images, separate images of that. Let me show one more from this the series here, and I'll just show the Photoshop one because that's got all the layers in it. Now I also did a lot of visual effects for the film too, and by visual effects isn't necessarily explosions and crazy stuff. Most of it was melding, kind of doing the same thing where I had to take, okay, they liked this shot of Tommy, but Cheech was making a face, so we got to use a different shot, but they're sitting next to each other inside a car. So I'd have to rotoscope one out and put them into another scene. There's things where you could see like the little monitor, ear monitor, they'd have to retouch out. I have to clean all that up. But you're doing it on film, 4K film. So there's a lot of that type of cleanup work. So most of that really boring stuff, it's not even worth showing. So, but here's an image. This was a promo image when their wedding album came out. So this was just a scan from that. You can see it's right off the film. So I got all this dirt. I had to clean up all the dirt and everything just to get it clean enough to run through. And then running the AI through gave me face detail of all the characters back. And it's not just taking some arbitrary face, it's actually them, which is just amazing. His crooked glasses and everything are all really enhanced there. So to me, this AI tool alone has saved so many images. And I think that it's worth the price. I think it's I think I paid $250 a year for it. And it's pretty much unlimited. And again, I use it like crazy because I use it even for my day job too. We get old scans, historical images, and things like that need to be cleaned up, and there's a lot we can do with that. So this is to me, this is a very powerful tool, and I think it's just amazing what you can do with it. And if you're interested in some of the AI tools, I write for Pro Video Coalition. And if you want, I can provide you the link to this. But I've made a list of AI tools in different categories. I got a couple hundred of them in here, I think. But I've got links to them all. I explain briefly what they are, how much they cost, all of that. So I keep this list updated. I just updated it this morning. And these are only relevant to people who are in creative content producing people, photographers, videographers, animators, illustrators, those type. There's a million apps out there for iPhone or whatever. There's a lot of noise. It does a lot of crazy stuff. I tend to stay away from those because a lot of them are gimmicky and it's kind of like the TikTok of technology. I stay away from that. But a lot of these are real usable tools. So it's worth going in and exploring if you want to see that list. Where is the future going with this stuff? I've got an example here. Let's see, where is that? Maybe I stuck it back here. Here we go. Here's a white paper. It's a study. Where's this technology going? I foresee Adobe taking this on and taking it as a challenge as well. But it's basically taking an image and being able to, kind of like what you do now if you use the Puppet tool. But it's kind of like the Puppet tool with AI that allows you to modify and move objects. And I think that is really kind of the future of where we're going. So obviously, people having fun with it too. But again, this is an abstract white paper trying all these different things out. I can provide links if anybody wants after the fact. But I want to kind of open it up now for some Q&A, so we've got time for that, and see what I can answer for you.
Check, check, check.
Yep, there we go.
Hey, hold on one sec.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering about the guts of your computer and how big your processor is to be able to do all of this stuff.
It's funny because I got laughed out of a phone call once with our film producer. Says I was working early stages of working with this film. I am just using a 6-year-old Lenovo ThinkPad and a big monitor, and I've got an NVIDIA. It was the fastest one I could get at the time. I couldn't afford a Mac anymore, so I had to go with a PC. So 6 years ago. And this thing is still a workhorse. I couldn't tell you exact specs, but again, it's 6 years old, vintage, runs a Windows 10, runs all the Adobe stuff just fine. And keep in mind, most all of this AI technology, other than like the brush tools, things like that that are used in Photoshop, it's all web-based. So all the computing power is back on their servers, which I think is another interesting thing, which will take us into the future, is having us have to have such huge computers to create everything, unless you're going to develop 3D and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, that's changing too. All the computational power isn't going to be in the cloud. It's going to be offline. And all you need is a decent internet connection. And by decent, let me tell you on that, I have 2 internet service providers. I live out here in Smartsville. We got zip. We got nothing. we're not one of those lucky folks that have the fiber on the east side of town. We have nothing out here. And I started off trying every 4G option I could get no internet out here. And finally, we were able to get smarter broadband, got a microwave dish on a 20-foot pole in the top of the tallest tree on the back of our property at the top of the hill, just to get a signal. And it's crazy. So we got that, and that's one. And then when Starlink beta was available, I finally got on the beta for Starlink. So I have Starlink too. So I kept both of them because Starlink's flaky, smarter once in a while, depending on weather, has issues. So I have to have 2 because I have to have connectivity all the time for my work, to work remotely. You know, the company I work for is in the Bay Area, and thankfully I can work remotely and I don't have to make that commute anymore. But even with my slow connections, I still can use this stuff, upload, download, process it and all. So very long answer for a very short question. I apologize, but I know how we all work in this area and all the challenges we have with that. And of course, who can afford a brand new Mac these days? I don't know. It ain't easy.
Any other questions? How about you folks on Zoom? Put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
Well, hi, Frank Boxberg here.
Hi, Frank.
Hey, Jeff, thanks. This has been really, really interesting. This creeps me out, something terrible. It's not that I'm any type of Luddite. I've been using technology in my work as a lawyer since 1990. And since 92 or 3, I worked on my own out of my house, litigating against big firms and the rest of it all by myself because of technology. So I get the power and the leverage, and that's fantastic. But it seems, just by listening to you, it seems that a lot of creatives are going to be out of work. And if it's not good enough now, it's going to be good enough in 3 years or 5 years. They're going to be out of work. As an amateur, it doesn't make any difference to me in terms of I'm not going out of work because of it. But and I've got tools that I can play with, like you've been talking about. But what about the situation for creatives who are real professionals and who are looking at very, very dark times?
Well, again, there's a lot of media and hype and fear based around that too, and some of it's justifiable. I'm not going to negate that there is some things to be concerned about, but like I was initially concerned earlier in my career when everything was going digital, and I was studied in an analog world, real world, tools. There's a lot of people who are using Illustrator and Photoshop and tools like that just to paint and create digitally for the last 30 years or so, that take those traditional modalities and take that forward and work with it in this regard. The things that, well, there's a couple things there. I don't want to get too much into the legalities of things, but if there's been a Supreme Court case that was just decided on this week. There's a photographer that was suing the Andy Warhol Foundation because he took one of her photos, did his graphic treatment to it, and was used on like a Time magazine or some magazine cover, and got paid a great deal for it and whatnot. She got nothing, but it was her image just been modified. Well, there's always this thing about artist rights, with photography and whatnot. There's a certain amount, but it's all about the intent. And as a lawyer, you would understand that too. It's like there's the intention of where does this go. So I think that she won. By the way, she won. It was a big case, and thankfully she won as a photographer. But that kind of sets precedent too, which is kind of going into this field. And I think that's a good thing to protect the rights of the photographers whose images are being used as part of that, as I mentioned in the beginning, part of that content library that's used to then be disseminated and repurposed in the AI world. I don't know. I am on the fence on that from a moral and legal standpoint. I think, though, that people who are professional creatives that do earn a living on it, again, it's adapt or die. It's another phase of that, and it's coming up quick. So you need to be able to figure out, what do I want to be when I grow up next week, instead of what I want to do in 10 years. It's going to be a big shift. And, I'm also in a fortunate position. I am gainfully employed. I am, I do have a history of time with this. I'm not a kid. I think if I was young, like as I in my 20s, and I just spent a ton of money for an education in liberal arts, I'd be a little more concerned, and maybe I'd want to decide how I want to utilize the tools and create a new path for myself, and what can I do differently with it. Because like I said, again, everybody's got an iPhone or a smartphone of some kind with a camera in it, and there's tons of pictures being taken every day that are from unqualified people with a couple filters, and poof, look at this amazing shot that I took, and it just because the filters are there, they're already on your phone, they're already out there. People are winning awards off from iPhone photos. And also people have won awards for AI images in photo contests. That's another discussion. But I think what needs to happen too quickly is a way to be able to identify an AI generated image, because especially in the media, journalism, but you've got to be able to trust and believe what it is you hear and see. And I didn't even touch on anything about that, because there's ways of cloning voices and getting people to say things. All of that's happening. I think that's the scarier part of all of this, more so than it is people possibly being out of work because people aren't buying their designs anymore, not hiring them for design work, because they can design something, tweak it a little bit. But again, you have to know what you're doing. You try to get a logo out of something, you still got to be able to go in there and manipulate it. The artists will be able to use it as a tool. The ones that are just kind of going, I've been doing this one thing forever and I'm not going to adapt, those are the people that may have the hardest time, transferring over. But yeah, it can be a very scary time for all those reasons. Yes, we just kind of have to watch and see what happens here in the next weeks, months, year.
So Jeff, we had a question in the chat. It says, have you had to describe the AI process in an image to the Copyright Office for registration?
No, I haven't. I haven't done anything commercially that way. Like I said, the only commercial work that I've used it for is, for production that I'm on, and it didn't change any copyright or anything of the original image. I use it more as a retouching tool professionally. So I haven't, anything that has been generated has just been experimental for my demos and articles, and I haven't done anything commercially with anything, so I haven't had to deal with that. And I think that's still up in the air as to what is copyrightable. What's a copyright anymore? And I think having, Lynn Goldman's case against the Warhol Foundation really helped that, at least from the original content standpoint. That's going to be harder for people like Warhol Foundation to protect its rights, because then people will say, well, it doesn't really own the rights anyway, so I'm going to take his thing and do my own thing with it. So, where do you draw the line? Then we get into a real legal battle, and it's going to get messy before it gets resolved. I think, I think we're going to see a lot of turmoil in a lot of fields here, unless we can really. The genie's already out of the bottle. Doesn't help put the cap back on, but we do have to find a way to mitigate, damage control as much as we can. But yeah, we're not going to be able to believe anything moving forward. It's a crazy time.
So I'm just finishing up a business photography class, and a lot of it, a couple of weeks, was about copyright. And basically the copyright office position right now is AI is not copyrightable. It was not created by a human being.
Mm-hmm. Right. That
and
is
you
the
can't
standpoint.
copyright it.
Right. If you take an AI generated image, you can't, if it's just text to image generation, you can't copyright it. You could use it. You got free rights to use it, but somebody else can take it and use it how they want to, and you have no rights to it. So commercially, again, I've had to sue people for using my stuff in the past, and you don't get anywhere. You're not going to get any money back anyway. Usually, if you do, it's going to be paltry amount compared to what you could have if you had gotten the original job. But it's really, really hard to go after somebody unless you're a really well-known entity, and you've got a lot of lawyers and a lot of money to go and get a lot of money. So it's fighting for your copyright is really a tough battle. It's not for the faint of heart.
Another question. It seems like the use of imaging photography and film in legal processes as evidence. If there was ever a question about the validity of imagery to prove something, it seems like that's gone. And then I even thought that it might not work anymore for surveillance cameras, because that digital record can be so easily modified.
Yeah, well, it has been, for quite some time. There are ways besides EXIF data and metadata from the original raw images. There's a lot of, that's how journalists have had to get by, is you have to give the raw images from your card to the publisher before they'll use your image in a publication. And then they'll say, okay, it's okay to crop or tone, make those modifications. But if it's going to go to print and it's a media outlet, especially news or journalistic media, they've had to show their data for years. And of course, the original film scans is a little easier because, it's like, here's my film, here's my transparency, here's my proof that this really was my image. So they've had to already deal with that quite a bit. We're getting to a point though where you can go in and edit and reorganize EXIF data, metadata. But I know there is software to, especially if you're going to a legal situation, there is software to be able to tell, has this image been modified at any time, even the metadata in it. Beyond the pixel data, there's ways of going in and looking at the diffusion of the image. Has it been edited in Photoshop or anything like that? There right now with AI, there's a lot of tells. You can really see where it is. And like I said, the way I've been using it, the intention of it wasn't to be, for a large print photograph that people are going to sit there and stare at and study for a long time. It's something that's going to be recolorized and reused and modified and in motion and probably composited with other action and other things going on. So I knew that it was just had to be recognizable, clean, recognizable, and very quick. It's just boop, 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 lots of images. And when the movie comes out and y'all happen to see it, I hope you do, then you'll see exactly how these images were utilized. Very few of them stay on screen for more than a second or two. Most of them are 4 or 5 in a second, or there's a montage of images that just whip by really quick. So, yeah, there's tells. There are tells, but like you said, in another year or two, there may not be. They may find a way to fool it more, and that's where it's going to be tougher. Yeah.
Jeff, we've got one last question. It says, can you discuss the Rimini versus Topaz? It appears that the Rimini may be better at doing faces.
Yeah, my only discussion on that is that yes, it does a better job. It's very simple to use for one thing. It's just literally drag and drop, and let me grab one here. So if I took see this one here, I'm just gonna take this image here, which happens to be one I've got open here. So if I just take that image, and it's cleaned up, but it's not, hasn't been Rimini'd yet, just gonna drag it in here, and you'll see it live and in real time how fast it works. Usually under a minute, even for large files like this. So it's enhancing it now, and it's going to spit out a result. Topaz is a licensed software. It stays with your machine. This I can log in anywhere. I can even use an iPad or whatever. I just log into the website and type in my ID, and away I go. So, and here we go. So I can zoom in here. Let me get here. Here's their faces here. And I mean, even the crooked teeth and everything. I mean, it is them. It isn't putting fake eyes on something. Topaz tends to do that. They kind of redo. They go, oh, I think you want an eyeball, and it looks like they might be looking that direction. It just can't do it. This is it's just so much better. Even the hair. I mean, hair and everything. It kind of over smooths some things, like some of these skin tones. So I would go in and probably dodge out some of that or mask it out in Photoshop. And again, I don't use anything at full strength, but they do have other enhancement, face enhances. They've got other beauty filters in there for different things now, which they didn't have before. Again, I hate those catfish filters they use on TikTok or in social media. So I tend to stay away from anything like that. But there is auto coloring and all other different types of things you can play with right in Rimini if you want to. But for me, I just need this detail to restore these images. And for that, I think this is superior to Topaz. And you can also blow it up too. You can enlarge your images. Topaz does a great job of enlarging. And I haven't tried, Rimini also has a video enhancement part of their tool. Whoops, what did I do? I went out of Rimini. So it's that's another you can use a video if you want to up-res a video, or you got an old piece of film footage that's been digitized, but you want to clean it up. It's a great tool for doing that as well. I don't have any examples to play with right now, and that's where it's probably neck and neck with Topaz's video enhance tool that I've seen so far.
Well, Jeff, this is Grace coming back again. You can't see me on the screen, but thank you so much for this presentation. Sure. I think it's been really fascinating, and it's obviously an ongoing discussion and will continue to be, but this has been really great. Really appreciate you sharing and showing us how to use a lot of these tools. And yeah, we just really appreciate it. And everyone join me in thanking Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully, Jeff, you can hear the applause. And thanks very much. Have a great evening. This has been wonderful.
All right. Thank you.
We're going to take about a 10 minute, 12 minute, 15 minute break, and then we'll get on back.
Laurel.
Okay.
And that was Suri. Hello, Suri. Thank you, fellas. I just stepped out of an elevator, and this Anyway, this is very nice. Thank you.
And the artist is Eric Engels. Moving on to our next subject, which is architecture. We have Under the Bethesda Terrace.
Well, this is a beautifully composed image, and the thoughtfulness that went behind the composition is really evident with the straight line of the ceiling design on the top of the image and the fountain centered in the background. The photographer made good use of depth of field to communicate the grandeur and depth of the building and maintained sharpness throughout the image. And the ceiling is just stunning. The entire image is very well executed, and I don't really have any criticism of this. Even the sky in the back, which could have been blown out by an image like this, the photographer handled nicely. And while it's light, it's not overbearing, and there's a nice graduation to it.
The artist is Allison Kalt. Next, barn door handle.
This seems to be more textural than it does architectural. I like the divide of the four pieces of wood and the other graphic element of the iron, whatever that thing is, I just don't see it as an architectural photograph. I see it more of as a graphic photograph, but it's really well done. And I like the fact that the artist really was able to get all the texture out of that surface. Nicely done.
The artist is Dave Arstein. Next is St. Louis Old Courthouse.
I like this image, and I think that the distortions of the Capitol are fun. I like how the old architecture is reflected with the new and the contrast it creates in the image. In my opinion, the image is well exposed and visually really interesting. The only element that I would change is the dark building on the right. And actually on my monitor, that building on the right looked darker, and it created more visual weight, which kept drawing my eye away from the subject and contrasted sharply from the colors and shapes on the left 2/3 of the image. And I don't know if the photographer had the option of modifying the point of view to eliminate the darker building or decrease the darker building, or in post-processing, decrease the heaviness of the building. But I really like this image. I just thought it was lots of fun, and I just really loved all of the distortions in the reflections.
And the artist was Daniel Chaplin. Moving on to fauna. First image is If It's Here, I'll Find It.
Well, I studied this for a while. I was trying to figure out what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. I like more things about it than I dislike. The fact that it says, if it's here, I'll find it. I'm kind of lost at that because I don't see a direction of that trying to find something. Again, your attention is being drawn to where the bird is looking, but you're not really seeing anything as a promising catch. Nicely done. I wish we could have saw, or I've seen more of the bird. Other than that, I like it.
And the artist is Janice Rosner. Next is Those Eyes.
This is a great image of this wolf. The eyes are gorgeous, and I love the fine detail in the fur. The image is well exposed with enough depth of field to maintain the sharpness in the eyes and the fur immediately around them, with a subtle drop off towards the side of the face, which I think helps to emphasize and keep the visual interest into the center around the eyes. I love the steely blue eyes and the direct stare. And the photographer also kept the eyes on an even plane, which is not easy to do in a live animal, even when the animal is relatively still. I don't have any suggestions for change in this image.
The artist is Daniel Chaplin. Next is Tail Spot, Lenny, Indonesia.
The reason why I'm pausing on this, I had to look at this for a while just to kind of feel for what the artist was trying to show. Again, the fish and I guess whatever that is to the right, I guess that's some kind of coral. It's really all about the fish. You know, I think just a little bit closer cropping would put more attention to the fish itself. And again, your eye goes right to the fish's eye, you know, and I think it's a pleasing photograph. I thought it was well executed.
And the artist is Mark Davis. Next is Lineated Woodpecker.
So this is a good sighting, and somebody got lucky not to have branches and leaves in the way of the subject. It was also a challenging image to make with a dark subject against a bright background. The subject appears brighter on this screen than it did on my screen at home, but on my screen at home and here maybe to a lesser extent, the subject was somewhat underexposed, which caused some of the beautiful detail in the, especially the dark feathers to be lost. Most likely giving the bird more exposure, you would have to blow out the background, which is, you know, just what you have to do in this kind of a situation. And then, and sometimes, you know, you just have to take multiple exposures with this kind of a situation, but the bird is sharp. There's a nice catch light in its eye, has the potential to be a beautiful portrait. And I think this person was very lucky and I like it a lot.
And the artist is Desert Powell. Next, we have Heron.
My first reaction was that the bird is a little bit soft, but I get beyond that. Whether the subject is soft or sharp, yeah, that's a choice that we have as far as like making the image that's likable for more people if it's really sharp. What I like about this is the placement of that bird and the crop to, you know, the placement of the bird is well done. Your eye goes up to the bird's head and it's brought back down. Your eye is now dropping to the left and then you kind of come back in and it's like a full circle going in. I think the placement of the bird in the photograph is well done. The only thing I might have done is maybe burn the top in it a little bit, but you know, picky. No, it's all good.
The artist is Jerry Thomas. Moving on to our next category, which is flora. First one is Glad to be a Glad.
Well, this clad just glows. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love the composition in the dark background that sets off the color on the flowers so nicely. The flowers are well composed. Details, and there's nothing that I would change in this image. It's just beautiful.
The artist is Ingrid Lockhart. Next, we have Carrizo Plain Wildflower Extravaganza.
I really like this photograph because your attention is drawn to the flowers in the foreground. It gradually goes off into the hills and the clouds all kind of blend together. Again, your attention goes to the flora on the foreground. I thought it was well executed and nicely done.
The artist is Anne Westling. Next is the season's last tulip beauty.
I love the shape of the tulips and the beautiful light illuminating the center. I would have liked to see how the use of a diffuser might have decreased the intensity of some of the shadows on the front flower. I think the blue flowers in the background are interesting and add to the context of the tulip, and it creates a nice complementary color scheme, and it's nicely done.
Okay. And that does it for flora. We move on to natural landscape. First up is Yuba River Lupin Last Light.
Well, this is me, I guess.
That's me.
Yes, we traded. Go for it.
We discussed this morning.
Yeah. I'll have my people call your people.
Okay. So this is a quintessential image of the Yuba River during the spring wildflower season. It's well exposed and the photographer did a good job of not blowing out the highlights in the background. I love the colors in the water and the light on the lupin. The image is sharp throughout and, you know, really nicely composed. I love the soft swirls in the water, and I don't have any real criticism of this image.
And the artist is Henry Goodman. Next, we have Lake of Diamonds.
Nice image. I like where the sun is placed. I like the division. Even though the horizon line is not exactly straight, it doesn't make any difference. It still leads you back to what the sun is. A little bit of hint of the snow in the front, or I guess that's snow. Okay. Just graphically, it's very pleasing. I love the treatment of the sky. The only thing I might have done, yeah, again, pick is like maybe darken the upper left-hand corner of the sky to bring your eye back to where the sun is. Other than that, nice image.
Artist is Janice Rosner. Next is Sierra Buttes.
That's you.
Oh, okay, me again. My eye keeps going to the reflection of the mountains in the background. But one thing, overall, I think it's a great photograph. I mean, I really like what's going on. The only thing that I don't particularly care for is the way the clouds are meeting the top of the mountain. It just distracts. It means you could have waited longer. Or if you're in the Photoshop, maybe take out a little bit of the clouds so it separates from the tip of the mountains in the background. Yeah, I think it's really a nicely done composition and well executed. Yeah, good.
Artist is Jonathan Beth. Next, we have The Flow.
So I'm kind of a sucker for dune images. I love walking in them and photographing them. And I really like the gentle S-curve in this image and how the photographer oriented the curve on the diagonal and the way that the light ripples hits the ripples in the sand. A lot of images that I've seen like this have the shadows darker, and I really like the way that the photographer handled this with the shadows being lighter and you continuing to see the detail in the shadows. I thought it was a well-exposed image with good depth of field and really good attention to detail. And there's not much I'd change in this image.
Artist is Fred Finney. Next is Sunset from My Deck.
Overall soft, but it's okay. It's, you know, it's the impact of this, where the sun has placed the shadows of the leaves coming in, brings your eye back into the composition. You have a nice darker images on the left. It also brings you back in. So you're kind of framing the sun. And again, I don't think I'd say maybe darken the top a little bit more, but that's just the way I would do it. But then again, this isn't not my photo. I really like the overall. Oh, I also respect the fact that you don't have to have a sharp camera to take good photos. Nicely done.
The artist is Gary Emanuel. Next, we have Utah at Speed.
So I thought this was a really interesting image. It's well exposed and and well composed. I love the reflection of the mountains in the water. I just think that the way that it's landing in the water there is very interesting, and the contrast between the mountain reflection on the left and the darker mountain reflections on the right. The clouds are moody and they set the tone for the image. The only thing that I would change is personally, I'd like the grasses in the foreground to be a bit sharper because the dark grasses are contrasted against the white and they stand out and my eye is drawn to them. But I really enjoy this image. I imagine it looks like places that I've been through many times in Utah. So I relate to the image. And I just love that mountain and how it disappears into the clouds and the reflection. So nicely done.
The artist is Ingrid Lockhart. Next, we have Nearing Grindelwald.
Love it. I like the echo of the shape of the cabin, kind of echoes the shape of the mountains. The way this cabin is placed within the frame works really well. You know, I can't really see anything. Well, maybe dark on the bottom right, but you know, picky. You know, I think it's a nice photograph. It's really nicely done, well executed.
The artist is Gary Emanuel. River by Honors is the next one.
So I thought this was an interesting composition, and it's when I looked at it, I kept like noticing little details and, oh, look at that car, look at that little farmhouse, look at that, you know, the hay baler and stuff. So I like photographs that keep giving you things the longer that you look at them. It's well exposed. I thought it was fairly well composed. I love the reflection of the mountains in the water and the contrast between the mountain reflection on the left and the dark mountain reflections. The clouds are moody and set the tone. Excuse me. The cloud reflections in the river and the yellow tones in the leaves and even the trucks on the highway tell a story. The blue water is nice. But it's quite bright and almost blown out towards the top of the frame. And the eye is kind of drawn to the top of the frame. And I also found myself wanting, since the river is such a dominant part of the image, I wanted something in there, a kayak or a raft or somebody on a boat or something else. But I thought that it was, a beautiful fall image, and I liked looking at the farms on either side.
The artist is Jerry Thomas. Next, we have Spring Along the South Yuba River.
So what's not to like? Yeah, it's nice composition. Even though that tree is right in the center, it's okay. It doesn't have to be in the center or to the left or the right. This happens to work. The detail and the foliage and the rocks are there. It's a well-exposed photograph, and it's very rich. It's not lacking as far as the exposure goes and content. I thought that was really nicely done. Yay.
The artist is George Pelpel. Next, we have Neast Point.
I thought this was a really thoughtfully composed image with the point of the rock leading your eye right up to those colorful clouds. It's clear that the photographer took care with their point of view. I love the texture on the stone and the peaceful feeling from this image. The image is sharp with good depth of field, and the brights are well exposed. On my monitor, the image was a little dark. And when I checked the histogram, there was a lot right up against the left side. So if you were going to print this, it might print dark, but you know, that would be up to the photographer. But I really like this image. I think it's well done. So I don't have any real criticism of it.
And the artist is Mike Shea. All right, next category, night photography. First is Illuminated Tufas, Bodie, California.
Well, your eye keeps going to the rock formation lower. I actually just took my hand and kind of blocked that out, and then all of a sudden the sky became more illuminated. There's a big contrast as far as the small amount of rock and the large amount of sky. I'm not sure if you even need the rocks below. But if you were to do that again, I'd maybe have a little bit more rock showing and bring it up into the photograph. The diagonal line that's going from the tip of the rocks up to the upper left-hand corner kind of brings, it almost looks like there's smoke coming from the tips of the rocks. I've never really attempted to do anything like this because I think it's probably very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. And this person definitely knows what they're doing. Nicely done.
And the artist is Fred Finney. Next, we have Burning Piano.
Well, this is dramatic and it raises the obvious question as to why is the piano burning? It was a challenging image to expose with the bright whites of the fire against the night sky, but the photographer did a good job with the exposure. I thought that was pretty amazing to be able to get that intense of a fire and not really burn it, blow out the highlights. I love the embers flying against the dark sky and that glow in the foreground. And I like the moment that the photographer caught the piano in the interesting state of kind of falling off at the diagonal and sliding off the keys. So I think that it was a really, well done fire image. And I still want to know why the piano was burning, but nice.
Well, maybe you can ask the artist later, Monica Hughes. And next we have Moonlight on Bridgeport Covered Bridge.
Well, this is very nicely composed. Your eye goes right to that star. And I think it's well done. Again, I like the shapes that are happening there. I keep as an ex-graphic designer, I keep going back shapes. It's all the way that we put things or compose things in the viewfinder when we take them. I may have maybe just cropped the top a little bit more, but there's always room for moving things around. Always you can change things just by a simple crop and then maybe move the bridge a little bit to the left or to the right. But overall, I think it's a nice image and well done.
The artist is George Pelpel. Next, we have Mojave Night Sky.
Well, this is a gorgeous sky. I love all the visible stars, and the Milky Way is well exposed with good detail. In my opinion, the rocks in the foreground are also well lit, but not overdone with the lighting, except for the bright spot in the lower left corner, which is distracting and could be toned down, and also the lower right corner. The image is sharp throughout. There's no comma in the stars. It's just really nicely executed. Clearly, the photographer put a lot of thought into this image in the composition.
The artist is Eric Engels. Moving on to people. First up, we have Gary Newman during sound check.
Well, even though the image of the subject is dead center with all the emphasis going on his eye, I think that's it helps. I like the exposure, also with the smoke and the backlight. It's hard to photograph rock concerts if especially it looks like this had a little flash fill. But overall, I think it's a well executed, nicely done photograph. Again, I like the fact that it's black and white. Yeah, I don't think it would look as good in color, but nicely done. Yeah, nicely done.
And the artist is Ellen Davis. Next, we have The Seer.
This is another image that looks simple, but it's subtle, and it kept revealing detail to me the more I looked at it. I think it's a study in contrast, and that this serious sky looks like anything but what I would think of as a seer. And the scene is also rather stark with the lines of the closet and the vertical lines of the floor. And then there's this like more exciting lines of his plaid pants and the feather in his cap. So I thought that there was this, it was kind of a study in contrasts, and there was a bit of humor in the image. It made the whole thing kind of intriguing to me. The image is sharp throughout and mostly well exposed, except the white sign is blown out.
Excuse me. And the artist is me. So thank you. Next up, we have new friend in Uzbekistan.
The first thing I realize is the color. And then I get beyond that, because that could also be converted to black and white, which I think would probably enhance the overall image, but let's take it for what it is. It looks like it's a Kodachrome photograph from before. The shape of the woman's head within the frame works very, very well. And you're drawn to her eyes. One thing I looked at when I was seeing this earlier, I just kind of put my hand over her mouth, and all of a sudden she's a whole other person. You know, it's difficult to photograph people that are real, and especially I don't know wherever this was taken, but I thought it was really a nice. I wish I was able to go to places like that and take photographs. I thought this was really well done, and outside from the color, I like it.
And the artist is Ed Sylvester. Next, we have Mary Peterson, real estate portrait, Sweet Light.
So this seems to be a classical portrait with nice even lighting and good exposure, and good depth of field on the subject with the background nicely blurred. I'm impressed that the photographer was able to get both the woman and the dog looking in the same direction at the same time. And I have no criticism. I think this image, you know, does its job as a portrait, and it's a pleasing image.
And the artist is Shelby Cohen. Next, we have Marta.
Ooh, right up my alley, black and white. I like it to start with. What I like about this is she's looking into the light, and the amount of let's say the shape of the dark part of the photograph as opposed to the long skinny light coming in, that shape. It's really well done. The only thing I possibly would consider is maybe cropping it a little bit closer into her. So it's more about her, but again, a portrait of somebody in that environment is really well done. Again, bravo.
And the artist is Emily Weissman. Next is April Showers.
So I thought this was an unusual and creative and interesting image. It's well exposed, and I think slowing the shutter speed to streak the rain was a good creative decision. The expression on the subject's face kind of says it all. Despite the rain, there's good light on the subject's face, and her eye is visible, which adds to the viewer being able to see her expression and understand her feelings about her situation. The image is well composed. Her placement on the left corner is well done. I have no criticism. I think this is a wall hanger.
And the artist is Brian Dunbar. Next is Girl in Thought and Motion at Ananda.
I just happened to be photographing that Ananda a while back, and photographing right against those stained glass windows. I'm having a concern about what is she looking at, what's going on with her, and her placement in the photograph could maybe be a little, I don't know, but something about the shoulder. She kind of closes herself off. Well exposed. The echo of the flowers on the right kind of echo the flowers that are in the stained glass. This is what is this photograph about? Is it a photograph about the stained glass, the flowers, or the girl in thought? Okay, in motion. I got the thought, but I didn't get the motion. Maybe just a closer crop and maybe a little bit more motion. But other than that, nicely done.
And the artist is Jim Bear. Next, we have Priceless.
So with the title of this image, I'm thinking that the subject is the crystal the man's holding, yet this is in the people category, which tells me the photographer's intention was that the man is the subject, or perhaps the relationship of the man to the crystal. I really like the pose of the man with just parts of his gray beard showing. I think that you can see enough of his face that it kind of implies what his intent is, and you don't need to see more of his face. his well-worked hands as well as his clothes make me wonder if he found this crystal. The image is very contrasty, with some parts blown and a lot of the image up against the left wall of the histogram. I think that this is a time when maybe a diffuser would have been helpful to decrease some of the brightness and even out the lighting. But that would be my only suggestion for this. I like this image and thought it was intriguing.
The artist is Michael Field. And last one in the category, this is bubblegum.
I just wish you could blow bigger bubbles. You know, you can't see the forest for the trees. I'm not sure what's going on behind her, but first of all, the way that she's placed in the photograph is great. You know, I mean, I like the posing of her arms. She has a reaction with the photographer, and you can almost see her smiling while she's blowing this bubble. Outside of not being able to blow a bigger bubble, I like this, you know, it's a nice photograph, nicely done.
And the artist is Allison Colt.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
All right, so we go into photojournalism. First up is bird banding at Empire Mine State Park.
So this image really does tell a story, which is the primary importance for a photojournalistic image. You don't have to see the ranger's whole face to know how intent and careful she is. And the bird's face, which is also intent, but not the bird doesn't look like it's struggling or like it's scared, so that it kind of says something about this temporary relationship between the bander and the bird. The bird, her hand, and the banding instruments are all sharp, which keeps the story in the action of the banding. In my opinion, this is a well-composed photojournalistic image, which does a good job of telling this story.
And the artist is Brad Oliver. Next, selling wild and scenic merchandise.
Okay. To me, this is like kind of a snapshot of a person that's doing selling stuff at a festival. It's nicely exposed, but again, I don't get the photojournalism about this. And the other thing that kind of bothers me is the light above her. I mean, my eye keeps going up there to the light. If in fact you just kind of crop that off, now she's like presenting something. And just cropping that would make this a little bit better, but there's nothing wrong with it to start with. I think it's well done. I'm just not sure how it works as a photojournalistic photograph, but nicely done.
And the artist is Bob Free. Next is Cyclocross World's The Dreaded 32 Steps.
Well, I can see why the steps are dreaded. It's a well-composed image with the diagonal of the stairs separating the sky from the action. The image is sharp throughout. It's a dynamic image that certainly tells the story. My only criticism is I think it would have been better if you could see sweat flinging off of them from carrying their bikes up there. This makes it look too easy. But anyway, nice work.
And the artist is John Sievert. And last one in the category is Visitor with Parasol at Ananda.
Well, Ananda gets a lot of play. The first thing I recognize is the echo of the shape of the umbrella and the color, and the echo of the roof line, and that whatever that is. I guess that's part of the I don't know, part of the architecture there. Yeah, it may be a little bit no, I don't know, maybe a little bit I'm getting echoes behind me. I get a little bit of light on the top. I may darken that a little bit just to bring your eye down. Because your eye actually is all about the play between the two shapes. It's like an umbrella and an umbrella. Nicely done.
And the artist is Tom Quinn. Now we're into travel. Just a few entries here. First one is Dean Village, Edinburgh.
So this looks like I imagine old Edinburgh to be. The image is well exposed with a good tonal range. It's sharp throughout, well composed with the stream leading the viewer into the village. There's some detail in the waters of the stream. I don't have any real criticism of this image, though it was a little dark and pushed up against the left wall on the histogram, so it might make a dark print. The photography would need to check that out on the monitor. It looks great, and it makes me want to go to Edinburgh.
And the artist is Mike Shea. Next, we have Kelpie Sunset, Falkirk, Scotland.
Well, nice composition of the two statues that you can actually walk around this and probably get a lot of different angles. But what really works from a graphic element as far as the interplay between the two statues and how they fit within the frame. I also like the fact that it's a square format, and that the image fits very well within the square format. Nicely executed, nicely done.
The artist is David Wong. And finally, we have Camino de Santiago.
Well, so this makes the Camino look much easier than I thought it would be. Nice, wide, paved road. I think it's well composed with the worn road leading the viewer as well as the pilgrims into the hills. The exposure is good, as is the depth of field. It's a moody image with the overhanging clouds. And thus it's a bit dark, which I think, creates the mood. On my monitor, the bushes on the left were really dark. On here, they seem to be lighter. So I don't need to say anything about that. I like this image a lot. The only thing that I would add is a couple of weary pilgrims laden with backpacks strolling down the road.
And the artist is Emily Weisman. Just a few as well in our next subject, which is creative fantasy, anything goes. First one is Take Me to the River.
What I love about this is the technique. The person who put this together actually knows their craft as far as doing multiple exposures. And it's kind of a hit and miss, but this time that person made a hit. The echo of the trees on the left and the right tells me that this was actually done purposely, creatively, and well done. Yeah, maybe I would have darkened the rocks a little bit more, but keep it. No, that's nicely done.
The artist is Ellen Davis. Next is Purple Haze, All in My Eyes.
Well, is this ever expressive? You can just hear the music coming from this guitar. In my opinion, this is really well done. It's a creative depiction of the electric guitar. You can just see the vibrations and electricity coming through the strings, which look like they're on fire. I also appreciate the more subtle effect of the patterns on the body of the guitar that looks like electricity pulsing through the instrument. Really well done, and I don't have any criticisms or suggestions for change. It just needs to come with sound.
And the artist is Dave McClellan. Next, we have COVID Echo.
This is technically excellent with a good tonal range. The blacks are rich and deep, but with good detail. I'm assuming that this is a composite, which is very well done without artifact. The concept of the image is compelling with the arresting gaze of the subject and the incongruent shadow. In my opinion, the image is relevant to our collective recent experience without being sentimental or sappy. Excellent image, and I have no criticism.
The artist is Robert Arnold. And finally, we have Tea with a Fast Friend.
Oh, that's mine too. Tea with a fast. I'm assuming that this is a composite with maybe the teacup and the dog added in. But I can't tell that, which is a good thing if it is a composite. I think that the image is well lit and well exposed. I love the light on the folds of her skirt and her hair, which is a rich black and with good detail. and the hair and the skirt complement each other. I also love the color scheme, which works well in the image with the background and her blouse and the dog. You can tell that whoever put this together it's very well thought out. The dog has a nice catchlight in his eye, and his intent is gazing out of the image, kind of adds an air of mystery. My only criticism is that the woman seems a bit stiff, and her posture in the chair seems a little bit stiff. But that's
An artist is Darby Davenport. Just 2 entries in this next one, which is manipulated but realistic. First one is 1949 Garage.
and this is a repeat from last month.
Yes.
Oh. Oops. Oops.
That's a Goofenheim.
Well, good job on that one.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
As we've already
that's my
determined.
favorite.
The artist was Robert Arnold, and we'll move on to the next one, which is Classic Shapes.
Okay. I thought this is a gorgeous, imaginative composition. The lighting's excellent and creates beautiful, subtle colors on the scarf. I think this image is exquisite, and I don't have any criticisms or anything that I would change about it. It's very well thought out and executed.
And the artist is Darby Davenport. All right, we're in black and white. First one is Caribbean Clipper.
Is that me or you?
Got you.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's a clipper. Black and white. It's right in the center. I don't know, I'm just expecting maybe a little bit more contrast with it, maybe the clipper, the boat could be a little bit lower, but it's right smack dab in the center. And I really don't criticize too much about stuff being right in the center. But for this particular thing, if that less water, more mountain range in the back would probably give you a little bit better composition. And then again, a little bit more contrast. Other than that, hey, I'll take that ship.
And the artist is Desert Powell. Next, we have Farrier at Work.
This could also be a good photojournalistic image, as it tells the story of shoeing the horse. I like the detail in the horse's hoof and the action of the hammer in the farrier's hand. I'm thinking that this might be stronger as a vertical image. And I did play with it a little bit. The brightest parts of the image are on the right and left sides and draw your eye away from the action. And the sides of the image, aren't really a part of the story. So I think that they're distracting, which is why I thought I experimented with the vertical. Also, the light over the hands and the hoof is nice without a lot of contrast and shadows, which is more evident without the distraction of the edges. So I like the idea and concept behind this image.
The artist is Monica Hughes. Next, we have Bamboo Forest.
Well, that works really well on many different levels, as far as your eye being led down the yellow brick road there into the forest. If this was a color photograph, the bamboo would be dominant. But right now, because it's a black and white image, I think that everything kind of levels out. The highlights that are in the fence going down on the left and the right really draws your eye into the center of the photograph. And then if you look at a little bit to the left, that one particular dark branch that comes up, leads you up into the top of the photograph. All things being said, I think this is a really wonderful photograph. Nicely done.
And the artist is Bernadette Sylvester. Next, we have Highland Spirit.
I like high key images, so I think this is an interesting interpretation of this cow. The image is sharp and you can see all the details of its long fur. The only thing that I would change in this image is that some of the hair on the snout and forehead is blown out and blends in then with the background, and the detail is lost. I know it can be tricky when you're making a high key image, but I would suggest you try to recover some of the detail in that hair, but otherwise, I like this this image, and I kind of have a thing for cows, and I like this kind of long-haired, punked out cow.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
This
you
one
very
is mine
much.
also. Thanks, Janice. Next one is Misty Fjord.
Yeah, it's not me.
Okay, must be me. Okay, well, this really works well. I mean, the catching that boat going up the river really brings your eye to where you want it to go, into the photograph. And it, if it continues, all of a sudden it will catch the gap in the left-hand side, and that particular shape now brings your eye up to the right, and everything is kind of fulfilled. I don't think there's anything lacking in this photograph, except maybe darkening the sky a little bit on the left-hand side. I think it's quite nicely done. That's something to hang on the wall. Yeah.
The artist is Kathy Triolo. All right, 2 more categories left. This one's color. And the first image is full palette.
Just a second. I think I lost a page. Okay, there we go. This is a beautiful image with all of the colors of this rich spring. And I love the tapestry feel of this with the undulations and the changing textures. The photographer did a really good job of depicting that. The image is well exposed and sharp. And this is a little thing, but the only thing that I would change in this image is the color of the woman's jacket, which really is bright and draws my eye kind of away from all the rest of the environment. And I would consider sampling one of the blues in the image in the flowers, and just modifying her jacket to be more congruent with the blues that are already in the image, and maybe change her placement in terms of being in the center of the image, unless the photographer's intent was that she be the subject, and that may very well be, and then you could just forget what I'm saying. I thought that the subject was the wildflowers, and she was a supporting player. And then, so I just love this. It's just a gorgeous image. I want to be there. So.
The artist is Tom Quinn. Next, we have Desert Bees.
I wish I could even get a little bit closer on these bees, so it almost becomes like a macro. They're kind of getting lost in the environment. Tricky shot to have the bees being that sharp. It's well done. I think if you squint on it a little bit more or make more contrast on it, they would separate from the background a little bit more. Other than that, I think it's a nice photograph, but maybe just cropping it a little bit more. It's all about the bees. Yeah.
And the artist is Brian Dunbar. Next is Not an Offense.
So this is, in my opinion, all about the colors and textures. The photographer chose an adequate depth of field to get all the nooks and crannies sharp. The cracks, the large cracks, create leading lines, leading the eye to the smaller details of the image. My eye wandered around this image for a while, and I just kept noticing, other more subtle places and details in the image. There's really a lot to look at here. So my only criticism is that there's more logs showing on the left than on the right, and on the bottom than on the top. And on the top, there's a lot of interesting lines and stuff. And I wanted to kind of see more of that. So I thought the photographer could either back up just a smidge, or just change the point of view just, you know, a little bit, but that's kind of a small thing. But I enjoy this image. It's interesting and has lots to look at.
And the artist is Dave Arstein. Next, we have Still Snow in the Sierra.
Ooh, that's pretty. Yeah, nicely done. Maybe a little bit light as far as exposure goes, but there was another photograph earlier that had something similar with the clouds meeting the mountains. I like this because the clouds don't meet the mountains. Everything is separated. The echo of the mountains and the lake, Rich, bless you. It works really well. Maybe just darkening the bottom right-hand corner would help a little bit, but I also, everybody's like doing square shots now. I like that. You know, it's not all these long skinny ones or, you know, horizontal or vertical things. I always like the square format, and nicely done. Yeah.
The artist is Jonathan Beth. And then we have copy.
So I have to say that this had me guessing. It's quite fanciful. Nicest Jurassic image I've ever seen. It's obviously a statue, I think, maybe not obviously, but I think it's a statue of a creature with big teeth. And I like how the orange fades into the green. I like contrast between the animal and the palm tree. It's like, what I don't know. The exposure's good. The depth of field has both the animal and the tree sharp. It's kind of interesting and mysterious. It kept me guessing and I got nowhere. So yeah, just kept me looking and wondering.
And the artist is Gary Kartstaffner. And for our final category, phone, first up is Photo Bomber in Glasgow.
No, that's you.
No, it's not as a bunch of other guys. I missed that trip.
Oh,
Well, okay.
it's
I
a
gotta look at this.
flying car.
There's a lot of things going on in there that's really wonderful, you know? I'm trying to take away from the fact that it's like a snapshot. It goes beyond that. And there's one thing that really makes this thing, beside the flying car, is the hand on the left-hand side pointing into the subjects that are being photographed. You know, that draws you into what that's all about. It's a good group and nicely done.
And the artist is David Wong. Next, we have Christchurch Butterfly.
Wow, what a vibrant flower. I love that. The intensity of that pink, and there's a lot to look at in this image. I love the wings of the butterfly, and I thought that they looked like stained glass. If the butterfly is the subject of the image, I think that it needs to be a little bit sharper, and because the lines of the butterfly and the outline of the circles are really important. And on my monitor, at least, they were a little bit soft. And I think that the leading edge of the pink flower in the foreground there kind of stole the point of focus. And that was the culprit there. I think that I really love the colors and the fact that, you know, it's not always easy to catch the butterfly. I think the background is a little bit distracting, and I would take the brights in the upper right-hand corner and the orange flower. I would just take the brilliance of them down a little bit, because there's a lot going on and they compete. There's a lot going on in the wings of the butterfly. And I would just kind of subdue all of that a little bit to kind of take it down to the brightness level of the upper left hand corner, which is a nice background and doesn't compete so much with the flower. And the other thing that I would do is take out the stem that's growing out of the butterfly's wing. But I think this is a really memorable sighting, and I like this a lot.
And the artist is Kathy Triolo. Then we have Al Barosi bringing down the house at Miners Foundry.
Done with an iPhone. Bravo, nicely done. You're right there up front. And what I like about this type of photography is it has energy and it tells a story. And the way that you captured that guitarist at that decisive moment with your iPhone is great. I'm a big advocate as far as using iPhones, and I think this will just add to that. Yeah. Oh, one thing I'm looking at is I tried cropping off the lights up above, and that was a mistake. No, it needs that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 lights coming in from the top, brings you back to the subject. And also the way the subject is looking at his hands, it draws you back into what he's doing. Overall, I think it's a great image as far as like a rock and roll shot, man. Nicely done.
All right, and the artist is John Siebert.
Thank you very much.
And finally, we have Better Days Behind.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is an intriguing old house. It reminds me of scenes out of Nevada. I don't know if this is Nevada, but it reminds me of scenes I've seen in Nevada. I like the detail on the house and the old bathtub that subtly lies in the grass. I like how the photographer placed the peak of the roof to meet the clouds. I like the formation of the clouds, though they are blown out and have lost detail. And the other thing, there are halos around the tops of the trees. I don't know if this was a sky replacement or what, but there are a lot of halos around the tops of the trees and around that little telephone pole in the back behind the house. So the photographer might want to take it back into Photoshop and redo the selection of the trees. Other than that, I mean, I think the whole image works, except for the halos. I like the composition. I like the mood that it evokes. I like the cracked earth in the foreground, which is a really nice, subtle detail that contributes to the story of this broken down weathered house. And yeah, I like this.
And the artist is Bob Freen. That is the last image and the end of our critique. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to our critiquers again, Janice and Robert. Thank you so much. And thank you to all who submitted.
Well, that concludes our meeting. Thank you all for showing up and being present. And hopefully we will see you next month when we get to vote on our bylaws. Drive safe, everyone.